Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, welcome. I want to talk to you about some things that also can affect our economy. The ability to have full control over one's reproductive health has real-world economic consequences. According to the Institute for Women's Policy Research, current state-level abortion restrictions already cost the United States about $105 billion annually due to reduced earning levels, increased job turnover, and time off for women. So, Secretary Yellen, if the draft of the court's majority holding in Roe versus Wade is the actual decision, what impact will the loss of abortion access mean economically for women?
Well, I believe that eliminating the right of women to make decisions about when and whether to have children would have very damaging effects on the economy and would set women back decades. Roe v. Wade and access to reproductive health care, including abortion, helped lead to increased labor force participation. It enabled many women to finish school. That increased their earning potential. It allowed women to plan and balance their families and careers. And research also shows that it had a favorable impact on the well-being and earnings of children. There are many research studies that have been done over the years looking at the economic impacts of access or lack thereof to abortion, and it makes clear that denying women access to abortion increase their odds of living in poverty or need for public assistance.
For half of the population of America, eliminating a right that has existed for half a century, particularly for low-income and minority women who have already shouldered much of the burden from the COVID pandemic, would be a disaster. Let me turn to something else. The Federal Reserve Chair, Chairman Powell, has acknowledged that part of the labor shortage is being fueled by an inordinately high number of retirements. According to the most recent figures from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are now 2 job openings per unemployed worker in the country. It's about 11 million jobs that are going unfilled, which has an economic consequence by virtue of them going unfilled. And sure, we just don't have enough people to replace those who are leaving the labor force. Now, what we do have is thousands of hardworking immigrants who are willing to work if Congress would simply allow them to do so. Would addressing the immigration visa backlog help shore up the labor supply and therefore the supply chain as a whole?
Senator, I agree with you. I think that it would be very helpful, especially under the conditions that you described. The labor market is arguably as tight with about as large a supply-demand imbalance as we've seen in U.S. post-war history. We've had a decline in legal immigration, and I think that taking steps to shore up our workforce, for example, you referred to the enormous backlog of applications. I believe that people, immigrants who have had legal work permits and need to have them renewed, have faced very substantial backlogs. And I think the White House recently announced that it's taking steps to make sure that those individuals will be able to work in spite of the backlog.
Well, I hope we can get there, because even leading business groups agree that robust immigration reform is urgently needed to address our labor shortage. They're not necessarily a voice in this regard, but they are, because they've come to that conclusion themselves. Finally, talking about the labor market shortage playing a major role in the slowed economic recovery, according to the Peterson Institute for Economics, the employment rates of parents with young children have declined by 4.5% over the pandemic, with concentration impacts among women, especially women of color. This is even more troubling as women with young children account for 12% of the U.S. workforce. How would investing in child care strengthen our nation's labor market and unleash our capacity for economic growth?
Well, I think the ability of a family to access affordable childcare is a critical prerequisite for women to be able to participate in the labor force. The United States does less than many countries in making sure that women do have affordable childcare, and the president has made proposals that would serve to make childcare more affordable. I think he's made proposals for universal access to 2 years of pre-K, and I think these proposals would certainly boost labor force participation.
$13,000 on the average cost a year for childcare. It is, for many families, prohibitive, and if not, takes a significant part. So I agree with you. Finally, I just hope we had spoken in the past about my efforts and legislation to create a capital increase for the Inter-American Development Bank. We are facing China's challenge throughout the hemisphere. The one entity that can be helpful to us in meeting that challenge is the Inter-American Development Bank. And while I see that Treasury has taken some steps to move forward with an increase, I don't believe that we are working together as I had envisioned. So I would ask you to have some personal attention to it. Thank you. Senator Toomey.